Upon the release of Martin Scorsese's 2006 film The Departed, critics focused on the obvious: themes of crime and punishment, good and evil, honor, cultural friction, identity, Catholic guilt, etc. It received good reviews, was seen as a respectful and worthy adaptation of the Hong Kong crime drama Infernal Affairs, and it went on to win the Oscar for Best Picture and earned Scorsese his long overdue Academy Award for direction. At its heart, however, The Departed is a 21st century version of a 1500-year-old narrative Latin poem by Prudentius called Psychomachia, which literally translates to Battle of the Soul. The poem personifies the virtues and vices, and it is intensely violent, a Quentin Tarantino-esque story from the Middle Ages in which chastity bloodily slices through lust, while good works chokes out greed and faith shatters the skull of paganism. William Monahan's script for The Departed is therefore appropriately violent, albeit too violent and too laced with profanity for some critics. But Psychomachia was also criticized for its violence. The basic difference between the ancient poem and Scorsese's film is one of subtlety. No reading between the lines is required for the poem. Personified virtues taking on and defeating personified vices argues that there is such a thing as good violence and bad violence, and that good will win in the end. Monahan's script is much more subtle, though no less violent. The Psychomachia is explored primarily through use of what is called the literary doppelganger, in which characters are created to act as twins or mirrors of each other to explore the internal struggle between virtue and vice. This personalized struggle, of course, is reflective of the larger human and societal struggle. What Scorsese's film does so well is illustrate that the line between virtue and vice is sometimes so thin that differentiation proves difficult, if not impossible. Jack Nicholson's Irish mob boss Frank Costello alludes to this when he says that members of his generation were told that they could become cops or criminals, but when faced with a loaded gun, what's the difference? The premise of the Boston-based film is straightforward and fascinating. One cop is on the inside, working as a detective for the state police, but acting as a mole for the city's notorious crime boss, while his mirror is working deep undercover as a supposedly disgraced ex-state police officer who is actually embedded as a mole within the crime boss's operation. Of course, each ends up trying to discover the other without knowing who the other actually is, and both have ties to Nicholson's character well before they become police officers. The characters are not cardboard, allegorical cutouts. They are complex and layered. Both are very intelligent. Both are loners. Both have excitable tempers. They grew up in the same place, have similar family backgrounds, and they are about the same age. Why does one break good and the other break bad? There is no satisfactory answer. Matt Damon's character, the mole within the police department, has a chance meeting with Nicholson's Frank Costello character when he's a kid. Costello knows of his family. He buys him some groceries and a few comic books. He gives him money. A relationship is forged when Costello recognizes the potential of Damon's Colin Sullivan. His future is a fait accompli. Leonardo DiCaprio's Billy Costigan ends up living a kind of double life because of circumstances beyond his control, his parents' divorce. His mother comes from an upper middle class background. His father is lower class, and Billy must be one person with his mother and her family and another person with his father and his family. Combined with his intelligence, it makes him a perfect candidate to work undercover. Why not do it in service of the Commonwealth to catch the biggest fish in the criminal pond? Their paths first cross at that point in the film, when both meet with the head of the undercover unit, played by Martin Sheen, and his coarse and rude deputy, played by Mark Wahlberg. Damon and DiCaprio are dressed almost identically, and Damon does not even notice his double when he exits Sheen's office and banters with the receptionist. As the story develops, and Damon and DiCaprio end up searching for the other, they both end up romantically involved with the same woman, a police psychologist portrayed by Vera Farmiga. She is, of course, essentially engaged in a relationship with different aspects of the same person, both accomplished liars with personal demons. The stress of his double life has DiCaprio on a knife's edge, and he cannot sleep, and his temper is short. Sex with Farmiga happens because she is attracted to his intensity and strength. Damon, meanwhile, displays an air of insouciance, but he struggles with issues of masculinity, and his early homophobic slurs and language give way to implied impotence. When Farmiga's character becomes pregnant, she's not sure which man is the father. It is a tour de force piece of writing by Monahan. The most ingenious sequence in the film occurs when DiCaprio, afraid that Costello is about to discover the truth about him, follows him to an adult theater in Boston's Chinatown, where Costello meets with Damon's Colin. Damon and DiCaprio are dressed, again, almost identically, in casual dark clothes with zip-up jackets covering hoodies and baseball caps. DiCaprio can never get a look at Damon's face. He only sees him from the rear. When Damon leaves the theater, DiCaprio follows him. These men who have been chasing each other now appear to be chasing themselves, which is entirely the point. Damon ends up stabbing an innocent man who's also dressed in a jacket covering a hoodie and wearing a baseball cap. As the narrative builds towards the climax, and Damon's Colin ends up shooting and killing Costello, it leads DiCaprio out of hiding and back to the department where he hopes to get his life back. But both men learn the truth about each other, which leads to a final confrontation between them on a building rooftop. Once again, they are dressed almost identically, with the only difference being DiCaprio's white t-shirt in contrast to Damon's dark gray one. DiCaprio arrests Damon, who is belligerent before asking DiCaprio to shoot him in the elevator when he realizes that his life is over. But in a shocking twist, it is DiCaprio who was shot by a cop who has been working with Damon throughout the film. We learn that he, too, has been on Costello's payroll. Damon kills him to eliminate anyone who knows the nature of his true self, and he is greeted as a hero for his actions. Of course, Damon cannot be allowed to get away with his misdeeds, and he is killed in a mirrored twist by Wahlberg's character, who left the department in the wake of the killing of Martin Sheen's character. The doubles are everywhere. Damon and DiCaprio, Damon's police partner, a henchman of Costello's who was also a cop, Costello himself, who doubled as an FBI informant. The setting in Boston is no accident. Real life provided the ultimate example of this doubling effect that is emblematic of the struggle between virtue and vice, with actual people serving as mirrors of one another. Nicholson's Costello, as stated, was essentially based on Whitey Bulger, the notorious crime figure and leader of the Winter Hill Gang. Bulger was also discovered to be an FBI informant when he became a fugitive from the law in 1995. While Bulger was Boston's most notorious crime figure, his brother, William, was the longest-serving president in the history of the Massachusetts State Senate, and despite living in opposite worlds, they remained close as siblings. The Departed, at its core, may be about the battle between virtue and vice, but it doesn't seem to be a fair fight. The two are so commingled that virtue seems to have been corrupted beyond cleansing or repair. In a world of doubles and mirrors, it appears that virtue is the reflection, the illusion, and that vice is the corrupted reality that perhaps ensnares us all.